Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric, and today I'm joined by Bridget Truxillo, and she is with Lady Law Shield.
Well, thank you. Yes, I like to tell people that I'm good at stalking others, and I do enjoy. I guess the nice way to say that I enjoy following along with your podcast and your social media. But I guess you could also call it stalking. But I love what you're doing. So good job.
Framing is everything, right? And from being a cop and certainly a wordsmith, you are an attorney. So keep listening, folks. She's a cop and a good attorney. She's one of the good ones.
Yeah.
But specifically, looking out for us in law enforcement, the unique challenges we face with legal concerns, which is more prevalent, arguably, than ever, and so very front of mind. And I think it's going to be a very exciting episode.
I'm excited. I love what you're doing in the wellness aspect. That's how I came across you and became a follower. I love the obviously wellness. I mean, I know Blue Grit wellness, obviously, but I love that aspect of what you do and the message that you put out and how important it is to maintain that. Obviously, you're a very proactive law enforcement officer, and I think it requires proactivity. It doesn't just happen by sitting. And so I love that aspect that you bring into what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I know from being connected in social media, health and wellness is a fixture for you in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about that, was that always a part of your career, or did you find times in your career or careers where you drifted away and had to kind of bring yourself back?
I would say in my current life, I can drift away because I have 3 kids and running a business. And I mean, you have kids. Some days, the
Yeah.
grand plans. I think one day we had to reschedule this interview because you had a kid home because of weather. I can't remember. Or last week,
Yeah.
I'm glad
It's
we didn't do this last week because my son
stick
was
or
home most of
weather.
the week. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
always something. But I mean, one of the reasons I got into law enforcement is because I thought I would, I was in my 20s and I exercised and I thought, well, I don't know if I can keep up with this my whole life, so I should have a job that makes me do it. So that interested me about law enforcement or military or the paramilitaristic world.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then you go into law enforcement and you realize that sadly, physical fitness is not really a requirement. And
Mm-mm.
so then I found that, I went into the narcotics unit. I was on the SWAT team. But I don't think you have to be fit to be on the narcotics unit, which just is stupid beyond stupid in my mind, because those are some very dangerous situations and you want your mind and body to be ready to react in,
Yeah.
the max possible. I mean, I'm in there buying crack or cocaine, I can't remember, in a
Mm-hmm.
mobile home next to a guy that has a rifle leaned up next to him. I mean, certainly I want my body and mind to be able to get away if I need to, so,
Yeah.
or the foot chases you get into at the last minute, or we would do a lot of what we would call buy busts, like in the undercover narcotics unit. And everybody calls it something different. We called it a buy walk if we were
Yeah.
buying and then leading up to a search warrant into a home. In our
Mm-hmm.
jurisdiction, we had to have 3 buys to get the warrant. Or there's the buy bust where you go in and buy the crack and you say, looks good. And then you roll off and the uniform guys come in and, blah, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did those undercovers, and I was in situations where I was either on the tactical team that was helping take down the when we did the buy bust. And although I was the only chick, I wasn't always in the forefront of the buy bust or the search warrants. But regardless, yeah, I got into it as a physical fitness interest. And then obviously, like I said, just realized that that's not really a thing in law enforcement, sadly. And then throughout life, I've discovered I don't need an external motivator for that, because I'm just motivated for that. It is a
Yeah.
crucial aspect of my mental health. Like this morning, I went for I didn't sleep well, I own a business and it worries me. And I have, my kids need all this work with homework and it's overwhelming. And like, oh my gosh, I have to go. It is my decompression. I'm on my walk and my dad calls me and I was like, Dad, I can't really talk right now because I'm in a really bad mood. I just need to keep
Mm.
walking so that I just don't go murder someone later. And just not talk. Anyway, it is a mental, physical fitness and maintaining that is I just cannot, that is such a valuable, easily accessible mental health tool. And I know some people will think, well, it's not easy for me. Like I say this all the time. I don't care if all you do is walk around the block. I have an app
Mm-hmm.
that I like to do. Sometimes I'm motivated to do it. Sometimes I'm not, called Step Bet, where like I'm going to walk anyway. And if I get
Mm.
enough steps, I end up getting a piece of the pie. They end up paying me money because I walked.
Mm.
And I just signed up for another 6-week Step Bet round.
Nice.
So even if it's walking, like I don't care. It's just
Yeah.
having a functional mobility at this point in my life is more important to me than winning a sprint triathlon. I didn't never win one. I got close, but we used to do that. I don't have
You
time for
used to
that
get
now.
after it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
cool.
so I think it's I am easily motivated to keep that going. I don't need to go to a gym to do it. If you look at my social media, I've posted my pathetic looking gym set up in my garage. Like I don't care what it is as long as you do it. And
I
so
love the gritty gyms. Yeah, I used to
yeah,
like my old place was just like my wife hated working out there. It was cold and it was like, and
yeah,
a lot of people love that, right? It's just like all these like hand me down or like secondhand weights and it's just all
mm-hmm.
this kind of janky like tie downs for straps and
Yeah,
no, but I do want to revisit some of what you said because there's a lot of elements there. One is that something that I feel like needs to be continually socialized is the fact that you recognize by being healthy of body, you're healthy of mind, and healthy of
mm-hmm.
mind means being acutely aware of all these little things around you when you're in a sensitive environment, when you're in a dangerous environment, right? So I know that a lot of us got into, or I mean, truth be told, a lot of people gravitate towards exercise for physical, cosmetic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe initially, like it's not always performance, but I
Yeah,
feel like even if that doesn't matter to you, even if your ego isn't as prevalent as maybe say mine, why I got into fitness initially,
mm-hmm.
wanting to look better and all these
Yeah,
things, or even be stronger. Someone could argue that's like ego based, but the fact is like when you are functioning well physically, like your brain is receiving more inputs more quickly, your decision making's better, and so I do like highlighting that fact that, hey, if you're doing this job or any job where you need to pay attention, which should
mm-hmm.
probably be most any work, yeah, invest in yourself, right? And so
Yeah,
I love how you even said something that resonates with me. And I think just about everyone that finds that fitness becomes part of their routine
mm-hmm.
is you might not recognize it right now, but if you start doing your daily walks and you stop, you're probably going to be like, man, I'm just not right without that little walk,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Fresh air, some movement. So I love that. And you're right. It doesn't have to be crazy. It could be
yeah.
any little bit helps.
People say like, oh, would you go back to, if you could go back to your 20s again, would you, or never? If I could go back knowing everything I know now, yes, I would be like an even more um, fine-tuned operator,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what I know now about health, wellness, and nutrition. 20 something years ago, people weren't talking about wellness and nutrition. I would eat breakfast, but I would eat cereal, and there's no nutritional value. I still love some of it. I actually had a bowl of cereal the other day, and I don't eat it anymore because there's very little nutritional value and lots of other reasons I could go on the deep end about
Yeah. I had
nutrition. And
3
I'm not
bowls
a
last
nutritionist,
night
but
at the end of
like,
my day. Yeah.
yeah, and I had it, and it really hurt my stomach because I
Mm-hmm.
don't have milk that often anymore. I definitely don't have cereal, but I was like, well, I put some walnuts and some pecans in it and some blueberries, and still my stomach was like, no,
Yeah.
thank you. But
Well, you get the value in there for sure.
yeah, I mean, I added the good stuff, but I also like it for the. I mean, I just love it. Honey, but not was it? It'll come now that I'm talking about. I can't
Honey
remember. Honey
honey
bunches,
bunches
not
of
honey bunches
oats.
of oats, not that one. I will think of it
Mm,
in a minute.
okay.
Anyway, um, but all of that, I mean, I think what I've also learned is that about myself, or just, well, not all of us, nutrition plays such a huge role in that. And, I follow this exercise plan. They talk a lot about it's 80% nutrition. And
Mhm.
meaning, I don't mean that you shouldn't train, you shouldn't streak train, you shouldn't, like if I was still in SWAT, certainly I would still be doing all the things I need to do to physically be capable of the job. I don't care to I do strength training, but I do it now for functional longevity so that my and when I'm 48 years old, I'm not afraid to say, and I have a 6-year-old. So, I want to be functionally mobile and happy and enjoy my kids and their kids many years down, many years. My daughters are
Yeah.
12 and 11, and they're not going to have kids we tell them until they're 30. But I want to enjoy life later. But when you're in the moment, I mean, I think if you compare it to like when you're training in firearms and you train and train and train and train so that whenever something happens, you have your gun jams, you whatever, you can do that without thinking about it. You can shoot
Mm-hmm.
without thinking about it, the hip
Yeah.
shooting without thinking about it. To me, it's that you're training your body in the same way to handle stress, because every time you work out, you are inducing stress. And if
Mm-hmm.
you look at it that way, that's what I like to say for law enforcement officers is look at exercise as training your body to handle stress and know that stress is okay, because stress happens and you can't stop it. And then that way, when you do encounter stress, your mind already knows this is fine. And it's one
Yeah.
less thing to you react to. And so
Yeah.
when you train your whole body with including in how you eat and sleep, that you're eliminating all the ways that your brain would interfere with you handling those split second decisions. And I just think all of that, and I just don't think people realize, especially when you're young, I don't think that you realize how much all those factors impact your split second decision making on the job.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of that, I think, impacts your ability to engage with your community. I mean, if you're somewhere where you're working towards improving community relations, your engagement, your ability to react or not, or your stress levels are high or low, impacts how you're communicating, your body language. I mean, just everything. And so
Yeah.
that's the part like I wish that we all were taught more to understand better. And I think that has really come around a lot in the last 20 something years. But I just think young people don't think, oh, it doesn't affect me, I'm fine. And
YOLO.
that
Yeah.
is not true.
Yeah,
So,
it's so true. And like I love how you recognize and illustrate that stress is like it's a thing that we can metabolize and it's a thing that we can train
hmm
our bodies to recover from, right?
hmm
Like all types of stress that these
hmm
jobs, first responder
hmm
jobs, trauma, all these things definitely inject, right? The chronic stress, operational stress, organizational stress. And it's like, it makes me think about just the concept of wisdom, right? And that quote,
hmm
something like youth is wasted on the young. But,
Yes,
that's kind of what it is here, right? Like
it's so
you're
true.
48, you're doing great, you're crushing life, you're, crushing your family. Um, not crushing your family, but crushing your
Crushing the family
family
life, I guess it's a constant.
priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, balancing, like you do not present like a 48-year-old in a good way. And so that's what a lot of this whole project is about. It's like a lot
hmm
of it is sharing what I did that wasn't great, right? In
hmm
my 20s, 30s, and
hmm
what I think I'm doing better now. And whether you're same age or older or younger, it's something has a lot of these things need to be discussed so people can better understand them and then just make them more normal.
Yeah. And I think what you're doing, normalizing things. I mean, normalizing that, what around what the job is and around what the job does to you, and normalizing the difficulties that will happen because of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
So true.
And understanding how you can proactively counteract it. I think going back to, it's hard when you're 20 something to think, well, what will I need to do now to be able to be happily and be functioning well in my 40s or 50s or 60s. I mean, all the guys, I was talking to a guy actually out of California, actually Hawaii. A guy called me, heard me on a podcast, knew that I worked in Florida. He wants to get a job. He wants to move from Hawaii to Florida to get into law enforcement. So he called me to ask for any advice. And luckily for him, all the guys that I used to work with are now sheriffs somewhere, or
Mm,
like senior agents in state or federal law enforcement somewhere. So I was able to, even though I'm not there, I texted and got all these guys, said, hey, this guy wants to move here. What, I have an idea of what's good and bad, but in terms of agencies, whatever, they gave me some great tips. And I just know that I told him, I said, I know you don't want to think about this now, but if you're thinking about which department to go to, you need to know what their retirement system is. I wouldn't have thought about that in my 20s, but if this is what you want to do for a while, like when do they vest and what kind of money can you get? And do they
mm-hmm.
have a drop program? And how long does it take you to get there? And understanding all that, because that's the thing you don't think about when you're young, like whether or not you should eat hamburger. I mean, I love hamburgers, but whether or not you should eat processed food every day, or, whatever. So,
Yeah.
I mean, all that stuff matters. And I think that is, with wisdom, but for sure, I wouldn't go backwards to not knowing what I know now, for sure, in any
Yeah.
kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. And so I'm curious how long, you did a lot of things clearly. And then how long was your law enforcement career? And then where did legal practice come in? And was that always an interest of yours?
Well, in high school, I watched The Firm with Tom Cruise,
Mm-hmm.
and so then I went to college thinking, "Oh, I'll be a tax attorney." And then I at some point quickly realized that sounds awful, and then
Yeah, it
changed
does
my
sound awful.
major. I ended up graduating. I was in my 4th year of engineering at University of Florida, go Gators, and withdrew from engineering, quit school. My dad didn't talk to me for a year. I went to New Zealand by myself as a parent now.
Hmm.
I'm just grateful that social media and worldwide calling exists a lot better than it used to. Dating myself, the only way I could call home was to call collect because
Wow. Yeah.
it's the only way you could do it. Anyway,
Yeah. I remember that.
so I was in law enforcement for 4.5 years, and that sounds relatively short, but in that time, you can imagine I did patrol, I did 2.5 years of undercover narcotics, 3 years of undercover narcotics, 2.5 years on the SWAT team. And so I went onto all those things really quick. And it was a very intense experience. And I say, because I was on SWAT team, I quit law enforcement. It was
Hmm.
not, I do not feel like it was a choice. That was a really hard decision to make. One that I talk a lot about because I never reported the issues that I was having.
Hmm.
And so I decided I would just leave. And that's what I encourage people all the time. Like, if you're facing issues at work, do not just suffer in silence, because of all the reasons we just talked about, the job does too many things to you anyway that you can't control. Law enforcement is law enforcement. It is hard. I'm not sugarcoating law. If you think law enforcement is too hard for you just because of the stuff you see, then you need to take a long, hard look at that, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to change. You can't change the hardness about it. But what you can change is the things we're talking about, like your fitness, your mental health routine, all that. But if you're facing things on the job, like harassment, discrimination, like your agency's coming after you some way or throwing you under the bus somehow, you can do something about that.
Yeah.
And so but I didn't. And so that's my mission, is to do what I can do as an attorney. But did I get out of law enforcement and go to law school knowing this is what I do now? No. I left law enforcement having no idea what I would do for the rest of my professional life, because that was going to be my professional life.
Yeah. That's gotta be
Um,
scary.
I didn't feel like it was a choice. I felt like it was taken from me. It was really, really hard. I went to law school because I didn't know what else to do. I just figured it can't be a bad thing. And law school sucks really bad.
That's
Um,
all I've ever heard. I have a
Yeah, and
couple
I
of
did
really
it in,
close
so
friend
normally it's three
attorneys.
years. I did it in 2.5 years, so it sucked even more
Man.
because it was more intense. But I was, I went in, I was 30 years old when I started. I was like, screw this. I need to get out of this. It's expensive. Like, the 6 months less of getting into debt more sounds good to
Mm-hmm.
me. And then I got out and I just got a job because I was, in debt and wanted to work. But I knew somehow, some way I wanted to help even though I was really mad about what my situation was and why I left, or the fact that I left. I still knew that I wanted to help law enforcement someday, somehow, because I just know what the job is, and I know I can help. And I just didn't know what that would look like. And ultimately, the fall of 2019, that I hated the law firm life so bad and decided, you know what, life's too short. I'm also a big believer. It's never too late. Life's too
Yeah.
short. Do what you want to do. I was joking yesterday to a group of women executives I was talking with. I was like, you want to quit your job and start quilting for the rest of your life? Start quilting. You might need to adjust what your income expectations are. But
Mm-hmm.
if that's what you want to do, do it. It's like, it's never too late. If you don't exercise, great. Just start walking to the end of the driveway and back. Like, it's just never too late for whatever you want to do. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
big believer in possibility. So 2019, I decided that the way that I could help in it, and then it really kind of ignited it even further in the summer of 2020, with everything that happened and the world hating law enforcement completely, which really made me mad. And then I decided that, but through getting mad again and always looking for possibility but through this hardness of everybody thinking that law enforcement are murderers, and we're not, is there an opportunity for us to grow? How can we do better? And how can we make a change? And the way that I can make that change is that I can help you with the problems. If you're facing a legal problem at work, I know from experience that it is all consuming. You can't, it's all you think about. It's all you talk about. It affects everybody around you, your family, whether you're married, it's your parent. I have moms call me saying, here's something my son's going through. Can you help? I have wives call me. This is what my husband's going through. Can you help? I have yet to have like a kid call me, but maybe we'll get there. But the point being that's how I've figured out that I can help is I can help. And I do consider what I do to be a mental wellness tool, because
Mm-hmm.
I can help you solve this problem, relieve the stress associated with this issue so that you can refocus on all the other things you and I were talking about, so that you can find I want you to be happy every day.
Mm-hmm.
You can find happiness every day, even the littlest things, like my coffee brings me joy every day. I have the most comfortable bed in the whole wide world, and I write it down in my gratitude journal regularly, that what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for my bed and my sheets. But it's things like that. So I can alleviate that stress so that you can refocus on these other things. And so, did I know that's what I was going to do when I got out of law enforcement? Absolutely not. But
Yeah,
here I am today, and I can say that when I started this, I felt like I was truly finally doing what I was supposed to do, but also that I couldn't have done it before I did it, if that
for
makes sense.
sure.
Like, I
Yeah,
wasn't ready for it 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but I'm 100% ready for it now. And I know
yeah,
that nationwide I can help and guide law enforcement officers who are facing the issues that I faced. And I know
yeah.
what it's like firsthand. And I think that's
That's
important.
No, that's so huge, and you're absolutely right. I think that sometimes timing is everything, and sometimes we're not ready for something, or something's not ready for
Hmm.
us,
Hmm.
and so that could be just for the legal profession. But like, certainly, there's no way you'd be who you are without the actual experience and the
Yeah.
context of law enforcement, working as a cop, and different types
Hmm.
of being a cop. There's certainly great attorneys out there that represent law enforcement and know a lot about it, but it is different. And so, for your personal mission and story, I think that's so powerful. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about whether there's areas you specialize in, or whether it's like the gamut, or maybe what you tend to focus on because of the frequency and the need?
Well, that's a good question, because I guess you just always think, oh, everybody knows what I do. I specifically help with employment related matters. I say only, meaning, harassment, discrimination, retaliation issues at work. I don't help with like the stuff that your union and that your legal team normally helps you with, the use of force. Let's say you're investigated because you made a mistake and maybe they're going to discipline you. Your union helps you with that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
I do regularly work with unions. Sadly, in IAs or various types of disciplinary options come up in employment related matters, because sadly, if someone is voicing their opinion that something's not right or not fair, or they're being, from the super egregious, like a female who was shoved up against a printer and sexually assaulted at a police department by a coworker. That's obviously not only a criminal offense, but that's
Yeah,
egregious. But all
absolutely.
the way down to like, but why am I getting in trouble all the time? And no, these people aren't getting in trouble. Unions don't help with that kind of stuff. But I do regularly work with union attorneys across the country. They have an aspect of it that they're able to help with, that it is covered by your union dues. And if you can be in a union, you should be in one, simply for the aspect of having legal representation. Because in a lot of places across the country, that's really the most, not saying anything bad about the unions, but just to efficiency's sake, to say that I was in a union, that's really all I was in it for, was so that I would have legal representation if ever I had a use of force issue or something like that. Sadly, when I was investigated by internal affairs, I never would have called my union rep in with me, because I didn't trust them. I didn't trust the guy. I thought he was just part of the problem that I was having overall anyway.
Well,
And
that's not
so,
helpful at all.
no,
Yeah.
it's not. And so, again, that's part of why I do what I do, is call me, because I am a third party. I'm not at your agency. You can tell me anything you want. Not only can I not tell anybody else, or I would lose my bar. I'm licensed in 4 states. I've taken 4 bar exams. No offense to you, but I'm not going to do anything to lose all that. It was too
Yeah,
hard.
no.
So your secret is safe with me. I am a third party disinterested. I'm not in your agency. And I know that's a big thing for a lot of people everywhere. Thankfully, not everywhere, but most places there's a trust issue. And so I specifically help, like I say, with the harassment, discrimination, retaliation, hostile work environment, and that result with things that result in. I have clients they just been in like 2 IAs back to back after they reported something they thought was unfair. I'm like, well, that smells fishy. Specifically, employment related issues is what I do, because I created my firm to help the person that I was back then. I was having a conversation with a friend one day, and I was trying to really narrow it down to what do I want to do, especially from a legal side, because I do have a wellness business. I said, finally one day we were on a walk, and I said, I just wish that I had me now back from me I was back then.
Mm,
And because you don't
yeah.
know what to say, you don't know how to fight, you don't know how to fight back, you're scared, you're afraid that they're gonna, like what I have been if I had reported everything that was happening to me, would they have demoted me out of narcotics unit or off of SWAT team? Maybe, but I quit SWAT team and narcotics anyway. So, I mean, that's exactly what happened because I didn't do anything about it. And so, but what could have happened if I had reported it? Maybe they could have fixed things if I had reported it. You know, they can't fix what they don't know. And I tell people this all the time. Do not assume that everyone around you sees what's happening to you. If you're facing an issue at work, maybe some people see it. Maybe you're talking to some people around you about it. Maybe they agree with you that it's bad, but they're not going to report it for you. And there's nothing you can do about it and nothing your agency is going to do about it if you don't report it. And my job is to help support you in doing that because I
Yeah.
know how scary that could be. So
Yes.
that's what I do.
So what does that look like? Because I can imagine when someone's fed up, they're like, F this place. It's been nothing but toxic and judgmental or, bias in all the ways, right? And halted my
Mm-hmm.
career opportunities. I've been overlooked. I've been passed over.
Mm-hmm.
I've been unfairly disciplined. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, burn it down. I can totally picture
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like when someone's like, I'm not ready to go, and I'm worried that, you bring up retaliation or bring up legal action naturally brings someone to be worried about that.
Okay, so I can tell you from because what happened to me. I did nothing. I didn't report it. I got so fed up with it. I mean, there was a day that I actually did try to report it once. I went to my lieutenant and commander. Well, who's my lieutenant in narcotics and also our SWAT commander. And I went to him one day, and there was something that had happened where one of the guys did something that was so blatant that if I had done that, they would have just eaten me alive. And I had it. And so I went to him and I was like, look, I didn't want to say who it was. And I was just trying to make it real generic. And I was like, look, so this generic thing kind of happened. And, I just want to say like, I'm not asking for better treatment. I'm just asking for equal treatment. And he ended up saying, don't make a problem for yourself where there's not one. And I said, well, there kind of is a problem. It's kind of what I'm trying to talk to you about. And I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying I want somebody to get in trouble. I'm just saying maybe you could go easier on me. Or, if everybody's not going to get in trouble for this, like, why do I get in trouble for it? He said, again, don't make trouble for yourself where there's not any. And then he went to my whole SWAT team and told them that I was trying to rat out one of my team members behind their back.
Wow.
So I would say that got pretty crappy. And shortly after that, I went to my my captain and said, okay, I want off narcotics and SWAT team right now. And I want day shift. And he said, you got it. You start Monday. Cause he kind of knew that was not good. So what could you expect? You could expect something like that. I tell people all the time, I'm not saying that reporting something is going to be easier, but the side effect is I gave up something that I absolutely loved, felt like I was not in control of it at all. I ended up losing those things anyway because I left SWAT team, I left narcotics unit, I left the profession altogether. And then it took me years to get over it because finally talking to a therapist, realizing that was a story that I needed to let go of. And it was only up to me to let go of that. But what could have happened if I would have reported it and it felt like I had a little more control in the situation, that I can't control you, but I can control me. And I wish that I had reported it and stood up for myself. So what does that look like? The first step is you have to report it for two reasons. I'll say three reasons. One, for you, for all the things I just said about what happened to me. You will be able to feel like you're taking control. Number two, why you should report it is there may be reporting policies in your manual, reporting requirements in your policies procedures manual, and they may try and hold that against you later if you don't follow those procedures. That doesn't necessarily matter in a lawsuit later if you don't follow their procedures, and they might be complete crap anyway. But the third reason is if you do end up filing an EEOC claim and you do end up taking it to trial, it does matter that you officially report it because you trigger federal protections by reporting it. And whether they act on those or not is a different story. And a lot of times they don't. But you've triggered your protections and it's up to them to do the right thing. And then that works in your favor later. The next step is you must get legal advice. Whether you hire an attorney to do it for you, but get legal advice. They're going to intimidate you. They're going to scare you. They're going to say you can't do this, that, or the other. They might retaliate against you. They might instigate an IA against you afterwards. I've seen all kind of things. But getting an attorney, somebody like me, who offers legal advice and consultation to guide you through the process or to do it for you really matters. And then you have things like, yes, you can file it with the EEOC. You have to file with the EEOC before you can file a lawsuit on it. I also know that almost all law enforcement officers do not want to file a lawsuit. They just want the problem to stop. So what can you expect is you need to report it and you need to ask for what you would like to happen. I would like for this to stop. It could be as simple as, can you just make this person stop? Maybe your agency's big enough where you could you could lateral to a similar unit doing something else. Mine, we had a very small narcotics unit. If I would have needed to leave the unit, there was no other narcotics unit for me to go to, but maybe I would have wanted to try detective or warrants or, whatever other option. But you need to be ready. And then also why you would want to consult with somebody is you can talk. I always start off with my clients talking through, what do you want? Well, I want to burn down the department. Okay, well, that's a crime. Let's talk about some other options. And we talk through,
Proverbially, yeah,
right.
figuratively.
What can you ask for? There is a plethora of things that you can ask for to get things changed. Sometimes that's financial. You probably need to sue somebody to get a financial settlement, but you talk through all of that.
Yeah, how common is that? Because you're spending money, your hard-earned money, to
Mhm.
address inequity, which is a big deal. And then how much of the time for in your experience is financial, I suppose, reimbursement or punishment, or however you put it, is part
Yeah.
of that.
I think that the cases in which it is egregious enough to warrant a financial settlement are not the most common cases. I think a lot of times it's, no, you just need to reinstate this person. No, you gotta, you demoted them, you gotta put them back. Maybe you need some back pay because you wrongfully demoted them and that resulted in a decreased pay.
Yeah, so that's money, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that's it. But the big dollars, and I know, like, I was talking with a former chief from LA, deputy chief from LAPD recently, and I know that they've had some issues. There's been some big suits and big settlements that came out of their former leadership. It really depends on where you live. And I hate to say that lawyer response, but it really just kind of depends. It depends on where you live. It depends on the size of your department. It depends on who insures your department. It depends on how they handle that kind of stuff. Like in Texas, if you are insured by the Texas Municipal League, it's unlikely that you would get a settlement easily or quickly. You are going to have to fight hard for that. Also, anytime you sue the government, they have immunity protections, just like you do as a cop, qualified immunity. They have governmental immunity. There's a public interest, and there's a legitimate public interest in protecting the taxpayers' dollars. So you got to make really sure that if you're going to pay out a claim for somebody and it's taxpayer dollars, then you got to make sure you be real careful with that, because that's a finite resource that our government is spending beyond anyway. But at least in the litigation aspect, that's not easy to get. So my conversation with clients a lot surrounds, I need you to know that if you want to file a lawsuit, this is going to be a tough battle. Here's how long you should expect it to take. I mean, in Texas, I had a case recently, they got a settlement, but it took 7 years. So, and in the meantime, I know a girl out of California, a smaller department, she ends up suing her department, and it has been a battle, but it was worth for her to fight that battle given her circumstances. So how often is it? It really just kind of depends on how much you're asking for and how egregious the facts are.
I'm curious, and don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you know rough figures, how much of that, you brought up gender, in your own experience, hey, if it was me and I said this versus a dude, how much of it is a demographic such as gender or race, or dare I ask about, in recent time, people's personal medical decisions and whether they were terminated from their employment?
Places like California, you'll get verdicts that are a lot different than in places like Texas. Or, the Southeast is very different than the West and the Northwest. And the Northeast is very different. The Northeast, because of the power of their unions, they can quash things a lot earlier on than you can anywhere else. Other parts of the state, like North Dakota, there are no unions in North Dakota, so they have no help. It blows my mind. There's no unions in Washington State. The Seattle Police Department, there's no unions. Anyway,
we have
and
unions.
somebody fact check
in
me on
Washington.
that. Let me know. But I've talked with
we have unions.
guys.
My department has a union, and most do,
And I guess
of
depending when I
varying
say union, it
quality.
depends on what they like. They're all so different and what they
Yeah.
offer. Yes. So I had a guy call me the other day. He's a white male and he's wanting to sue for what race discrimination and gender discrimination. And I said, I'm gonna tell you right off, you'll have a hard time in front of any jury. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, as a white dude, that's going to be hard. And I've had that conversation with people before. But there are
Mhm.
also some legit cases of women discriminating against women. A woman I have a client there, her female sergeant got her fired because she doesn't think women should be in law enforcement. I'm sorry.
A special
What?
breed.
Like,
Yeah. Shout out to Jen Moss with Lexipol Police One. She wrote an article. She retired as a lieutenant in Arizona,
mhm,
and she writes about the female dynamics of,
mhm,
sometimes it's almost like trying to protect their own, or like, hey,
mhm.
you're not cut out for this, but then maybe I am, right?
Yeah,
There's just a lot of
yeah,
different dynamics. Yeah.
yeah. Or I've had, you know, Hispanic discriminating against blacks and blacks discriminating against Hispanics. I mean, it blows
Sure.
my mind the stupid stuff that people say and do. And in today's world where almost everything can be recorded and you don't know it, and maybe you live in a state where it's a two-party state and you're supposed to have permission from both sides, but that doesn't mean they're not going to record it, and that doesn't mean that they won't give it to me to let me hear as their attorney, and then that I will then share with the administration and say, "Hey, I know we can't use this in the court of law, but here's your proof." I
Yeah.
mean, that stuff matters. And so in today's world, it just blows my mind the stuff people like say and think they can get away with, or there's just the stupid comments that people say, the derogatory, the racial I mean, just stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, just be really careful who you say that in front of, or how about just not say it because
Yeah.
that'd be kind, you know.
It's so true, because I think it is worth saying that, like, predominantly, like, I haven't experienced that in my department, and I haven't heard about it closely in my region. And we are a more progressive area, and there's some
Yeah,
benefit to that, right? In
yeah,
Western Washington. But,
yeah.
before too many years, I think it was actually several years ago, I think I'm reading Police One or whatever, and I see there's actually a situation in a small department where it was a very high up, like the chief or someone near the top, like, left some note, and it was so racially bigoted against a black officer. And I'm like,
Mm,
whether it's a joke, like the claim of a joke, but I'm like, then the vast majority of us can hear this and be like, 100% unacceptable. And so,
hmm
some people might hear the discussion of different workplace harassment and different aggressions and the level of aggressions, but like, let's remember that there are just still some people, some rotten people being really vile and rotten, and we need to hold account. And I think every good cop can agree the thing that we need to ensure is accountability for cops. Like,
hmm
no, nothing pisses off cops more than a bad cop, and that
Oh, I
falls in
agree.
with that. Yeah.
I totally agree. I was just saying again, I was talking with this unrelated group of woman room full of women executives, and I was like, "Look, yes, I'm a former cop, but I will be the first one to say that bad cops need to be kicked out.
Hmm.
Like if you're doing wrong, get out, because there are
Yeah.
too many of us who strive every single day, and I'll include myself in that because I did it every single day that I worked. And I'm also like I'm a dork when it comes to like it's either right or it's wrong, or it's against the law or it's not against the law, which makes in being the narcotics unit tricky
The
because
scales
like
of
yes,
justice are so sensitive, huh?
yes they are,
Hmm.
but if you did wrong, then get out. And I
Yeah.
think I talk about this a lot. I mean, one of the reasons I think you should have a very healthy mental wellness routine, which includes a focus on things that has nothing to do with law enforcement on a regular
Yes.
basis in your life, is because the job of law enforcement carries a lot of power, and that you have to actively work to make that, to not associate that with who you think you are.
Mm,
Because I'm Bridget, you're Eric, I'm not a cop anymore, you are, but tomorrow you could not be a cop, and all of a
100%. Yeah.
sudden you are not carrying that gun and you don't have that vest and you don't have that badge, and you think, well, who am I without that? You're still Eric, I'm
Hmm.
still Bridget. It's just a different job. And so you have to work actively to not associate too much meaning in that. And I think that's where some can go wrong. But to go back to what you were saying about bringing light, like one of the questions I got yesterday is, well, what can we do about this? How can we fix things? Well, I think that talking about this from a leadership perspective, I love that the guys that I used to work with, the ones that were not the ones that I had such a problem with.
Mm-hmm.
They are in leadership now, and they're the ones that I can go to and say, hey, I'd like to come in and just talk to your group about, here's what you should know. Here's what this looks like. Here's an example. Do you know what your HR department does when they get a complaint? And here's the reason why I say that. I've had more than one case where my client reported it to HR, followed the reporting procedures, and they come to find out later, HR read it and it was like, I decided this didn't harassment, so I just closed it. Never told the chief about it. Never told, anybody else about it. And so it went nowhere. And how do you think that? So this person finally reports it, and then they do nothing. How defeating is that? So that, and then also when I come back to what you should report it, I tell you there's 2 ways you should report it always: to your supervisor and to HR. Your supervisor is going to have a mandatory reporting procedure that they're supposed to follow. I don't know if they always do it. I know they always don't. But also, you want that to come from both sides. You want that, hopefully it's not your chief that's the problem, because I have one of those cases as well. But that your supervisor has a reporting, and then maybe does it go to the lieutenant and the major and the chief? Does it get to the chief's desk somehow? Like, you want it to be on the operational side and the admin side, because you don't want it to get somebody in HR who's undereducated and undertrained and probably underpaid and overworked, and they're supposed to decide the fate of your career. That's not fair. I tell that people all the time.
No, for
like,
sure.
what should we do about it? But let's bring
ways.
it to, like, I want to talk to chiefs. I want to talk to the leadership and say, I need you to know what's happening, because you might not know this is happening. And this is how we can fix it. If you just know it's, oh my God, I've been interviewed on podcasts by former chiefs who've said to me, if I would have known there was a female in my department experiencing what you'd experienced, who didn't tell me and then quit, like, I would have, he said to me, it's like, that would have broken my heart. Like, and then also it's like a huge financial loss for the department. They spent thousands and thousands of dollars on me, and then I quit.
Yeah.
For not, and then what? You gotta start over.
Yeah, and these days, man, it's like it's an open market, right? For a good cop, especially a trained cop. You don't have to wait for academy. You just like plug and play and get them off the road.
And I tell people all the time, do not suffer where you are. You can get another job.
Yeah.
Would I have transferred right over and have gone right into a SWAT team? Probably not, because the timing of that worked out for me. And maybe the next department has a 5-year mandatory experience, and I'd only been a cop for a year and a half. And I don't think that's a bad thing, personally. Let's be a cop for 5 years before you go to the SWAT team. Although I don't
push back on that, because 3 years is like the new 5 years with our junior profession.
I didn't care about it. And I don't really think the physical aspects of what you need to be on SWAT, or if you can shoot and run. If you can do all the tactical things, I don't think that experience is required for that. I just think that experiencing the stress of everything that comes along with all of that might be slightly less severe if you had just experienced the job a little bit longer.
Yeah, there's definitely some truth to that.
Yeah, I had just gotten in patrol, and I had just gotten the narcotics unit, and I had just gotten on SWAT, and then I was just doing all those things. That was intense. That's just also my personality. But that being said, I think that we can all make a difference in your experience and me with my experience and the guys that I know that I used to work with, and being open to looking at, don't take this personal. It is what it is. It is happening. How can we make it better? How can we fix what may be broken? And I'm not saying you're flooding your whole department because your boiler whatever broke. I'm saying you just might have a small leak. Fix the leak. That's it. And then the whole system runs more efficiently, and your water costs you less money because you're spending less on your water bill. It all works better. And that is part of my goal in what I do, I want management to hear me. I want the guys who are hearing me are becoming sergeants and becoming lieutenants. I want this to matter to you, because it matters to the people who are working for you, and you will have a great team who make good decisions, who improve community relations. It is a positive ripple effect if you take care of the people who you work with, even if you don't maybe your personalities aren't the same. Maybe you don't agree with their perception of how they took that comment. But also, here's something you need to know. Your perception of that comment is not what matters. It is my perception. I don't mean me as the attorney. I mean me as the receiver.
Maybe that's the overarching thing, right? It makes so much sense that you came on, but just the fact that we have it hard enough, we got to remember that we're same team. And when we are understaffed, we're overworked, we're overstressed, and there's all these competing negative narratives, like let's just be kind to each other. Let's be professional. Like, it shouldn't have to really belabor this, but maybe we do, because it is like the same team, same mission. We're trying to be there and serve others. And so let's do that with civility. And yeah, sometimes that needs to be called out. And I appreciate you doing what you're doing for that reason. Is there anything you want to summarize for the audience? And then please do let us know where we can find you.
I just say it all the time. I think that it's worth investing in yourself to get help when you're facing issues like this, because for all the reasons I said, it's going to be scary. You don't want to say you're going to feel like they're attacking you and throwing you in the bus. And you just have to always remember, like, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I don't know if you've read that book. The second agreement is don't take things personal. And that's a really hard thing to do. I've read the book twice, and I think it's only through decades apart and reading it twice and being older I can see, I feel like I'm just now starting to grasp it. But is that my job is to help you realize that in these situations at work, okay, let's not take this, but it's impossible for you to not take it personal. It's your job, it's your career, it's your professional life, it consumes you. But it's worth it. This for the same reason I will invest in high quality vitamins for myself, or a good bike, or a good gym, or the workout clothes that I spend too much on, but they last 10 years. Is like spend the money to get some help and advice. I mean, I offer, the way you can find me is ladylawshield.com. I offer an entry-level consult, whereas like it's not me doing it for you. You're not putting your agency on notice that you have an attorney, because sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't want to do that. It could get worse. I agree. It could. So let me help you review everything. I'll review it all. I'll tell you what the issues are. I'll tell you what you should say. I'll give you a plan of action. And then that is it, if that's all you want. But I know I would have paid that when I was a deputy sheriff. So you can book a call with me on my website. You can find my social media on my website. Definitely sign up for the newsletter, even if you don't have a legal problem you need help with now. My goal is to, just like you shoot firearms all the time so that you can do it without thinking about it, sign up for my newsletter, because I give you little tips of things you should know, so that it plants that in your brain, so that when something unjust is happening to you at work, you can just right away say, hey, you know what? I don't think that was exactly right. We should have a conversation about it. Like you said, you can do it with civility. You don't have to go in and blow up your patrol car on Friday afternoon in the middle of an intersection. You can do it the right way. And I want you to have the tools to know when that should start, how you can trigger it. I want it to trigger inside of you. I want you to trigger, no, I can do this for myself. So, sign up for my newsletter, call me if you need me, and I can help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, your service before, with the badge, and then now after, alongside the badge. Thanks again, Bridget.
Thank you. Yes, I love how you said that. I'm going to write that down.
All right, please do. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.